Okay, over to you, Willie.
Thank you very much, Deline, and a heartily welcome to all our honorary rangers that are joining us tonight, as well as guests that are tuned in to our SANParks Honorary Ranger webinar, the at-home webinar. The topic of tonight's webinar is the mountain zebra, Camdeboo Protected Environment. And I always knew about this this so-called corridor that they want to establish. I never realized that they actually started with the process in 2012 already, and that the corridor was actually, or this environment was actually proclaimed in 2016 already. But I'm not here to tell you what the corridor is all about. We are actually privileged to have the chairperson of the Mountain Zebra Camdeboo Protected Corridor with us tonight to tell us what this project is all about, and also the process that were followed to get SANParks and the Wildlife Foundation and the Department of Environmental Affairs and more than 10 hands full of private landowners to agree to the establishment of this corridor. So before I introduce the speaker to you, I just would like to go through a few house rules. Once again, those of you that are regular viewers, please feel free to post your questions and answers. For those of you that are connected via Zoom on the Q&A section of it, you're more than welcome to chat to each other in the chat box. But Q&As in the Q&A session link, please. And those of you, I also would like to welcome our Facebook friends. Those of you that that are watching us on Facebook, you are welcome to also pose your questions in the remarks section of Facebook, and we will deal with that. We will deal with the questions and answers after Paul has closed his presentation, and he will gladly then answer the questions that you have posted. So let's start. Allow me to welcome first of all, and also to introduce Paul Merrifield to you. Like I said, he's the chairperson of the Mountain Zebra Camdeboo Protected Environment. Paul grew up in Natal. I'm actually surprised, you know, for a Nat alien and an Eastern Cape guy, he speaks very good Afrikaans. So he grew up in Natal. He followed a career, corporate career in civil engineering industry in Gauteng. And he settled in 2010. He settled in the Camdeboo near Graafrenet on a farm. Paul is a farmer and landowner in this corridor, and he farms with cattle and sheep. He's passionate about conservation of this fragile environment surrounding the Camdeboo, and I think that's the reason why he's involved, not only involved in the project, but also as chairing this project. And he mentioned that he's married to Liesel, and he's also the father of 4 lovely daughters. So, Paul, you know, I've dealt with many farmers in the past. Hopefully one of your sons-in-law will be interested in farming. But with that, I'm going to hand over to you, Paul. We're really looking forward to your talk tonight about a project that I think very few of us know anything or very little. So thank you, Paul. We're all ears.
Willie, dankie. En dankie vir jou mooi woorde. I'm just going to get my slide up here. Yeah. So good evening, everyone. I hope the sound is okay and that you can see. So yeah, it's good to be here, and it's quite impressive to think that there's, I understand, 400 odd people out there having a look this evening. So I hope what I have to share is valuable and worthwhile to you. So if I may get started without further delay. Our topic is conservation through collaboration. That is our pretty much our vision for the Camdeboo or Mountain Zebra Camdeboo Protected Environment. So you'll see there that, just give me a second, I want to get my, why is my slide not working? Give me a sec here. Ah, there we go. I see. So what the slide is saying to you there is that the Mountain Zebra Camdeboo Protected Environment is 875,000 hectares of privately owned land that's now officially been declared as a protected environment. Now, 875,000 hectares, it'll come up later on in the slides, but that is about half the size of the Karoo National Park. So it's quite a vast area. What we're going to do is run through a few things and try and give you a better understanding of what it means. So the first is, obviously, I'll show you where is this place. Excuse me, what does conservation through collaboration mean? We'll look at some of the early thinking, particularly of what this corridor, in inverted commas, was. And then we'll go on to get an understanding of the subsequent formation of that, of the MZCPE, which stands for Mountain Zebra Camdeboo Protected Environment. And then we'll look at what this means for everyone. And then, you know, there's some solutions to old problems that we believe are found in this. So the first is just a location context. So I assume you can see my mouse pointer here. That is now indicating where it is in the Eastern Cape. Call it the northwestern part of the Eastern Cape. This map, the green that is colored in there, is a little bit outdated. That is, in fact, an earlier map. This is now much greener, but it does give you an indication of where it is. In fact, the greenness is not just having been filled in on the map, but also to do with the amount of rain we've had this season. So, but yeah, that is our location. So what does this conservation through collaboration mean? So our vision, and that is clearly stated in our documents, answers the question of where do we want to go to? And it explains the partnership that's been created between SANParks and landowners, where the parties can achieve both their own and common goals. So it's their own and common goals together. So remember, what we're talking here is landowners. They might have farms, game farms, lodges, whatever their business may be, but it is owned, it's land owned by various entities and SANParks. So what I'm going to share with you here is the first chairman of the MZCPE, which is our abbreviation for that, Mr. Ed Kingwell. These were his words that were recorded. So I'm going to read it to you because it sums up very nicely a lot of what it's all about. So he says there, the declaration of the MZCPE is the fulfillment of a dream for conservation conscious and sustainability minded, family focused landowners. The unique collaborative melding of ideas for the fulfillment of this ambitious initiative bears testament to the character and resilience of all participating parties. The establishment of the MZCPE substantiates the imperative of the secure, biodiverse ecosystem intricately involved with and supportive of the mountain zebra and Camdeboo National Parks. My involvement with the formation and realization of the MZCPE allowed me to bear witness to a flood of goodwill, a longed-for expression fulfilled, and a deep gratitude and reverence for the Karoo and its people. So I hope that gives some understanding, and certainly it was an ambitious project. When we started getting together as interested landowners, probably back in the mid 2014, if not before, we really did think it was ambitious, and like many of these things, they just don't really get started. But this one really has. So our mission, you saw now, that was the vision that we just saw. The mission of the MZCPE is to maintain the current landscape. And this is important for understanding, to grasp what this MZCPE is about. So it's to maintain the current landscape in terms of its biodiversity, scenic, and landscape value. So it's biodiversity, scenic, and landscape value. Now remember that this is a mission that both landowners and SANParks are subscribing to. And it's through collective action by landowners and to protect the area from detrimental developments. So I trust that makes it a little clearer. Obviously, I don't see anybody in the background to get feedback or nods or whatever, so I'm going to continue. So how did this thing come about? So if we take it back to the beginning, so SANParks has designated buffer zones around the two national parks. That's the Mountain Zebra and the Camdeboo National Park. And no doubt it will be the same everywhere for all national parks. So these buffer zones focus on the areas outside of the parks that need to be protected to allow the park ecosystems to function more naturally. So it's quite an important concept, that the buffer zones. So the buffer zones, they consider three main elements when being designed or drawn up. They look at the water catchment area, they look at the natural priority areas, and also importantly, the view shed areas to protect the scenic characteristics of the park. So typically, one doesn't want to have a national park on the edge of a city where the view shed or the view that people have from their national park is not particularly natural looking. And obviously, it's looking to protect the water catchment areas and then the natural priority areas as well. So with that in mind, and if you'll excuse me, I'll refer to it often as the MZCPE, or the, otherwise I'm going to get tongue-tied with all the mountain zebras and Camdeboos. But these two parks, their buffer zones overlap and collectively cover an area of about 840,000 hectares, mostly made up of private land. And these are farmed by stock farmers or private game reserves. So the area is deserving of formal protection status for a number of reasons. And I think one might ask, so why here? Why did anybody come to look here? So, and it's a valid question. So obviously these two parks, they do have buffer zones. So it was to look at trying to consolidate those, because you saw in an earlier slide, the extent is about 840,000 hectares. So they do overlap. It contributes to achieving regional and national protected area targets, including making a significant contribution to conserving 13 national vegetation types poorly conserved elsewhere in South Africa. It makes up a large section of the National Protected Areas Expansion Strategy. It can conserve an area with unique and valuable scenic and landscape characteristics, conserve a transitional area between 4 biomes, also conserve the Snewberg Center for Endemism, conserve a diverse assemblage of plants and animals, and conserve important water catchments for the Great Fish River. So to protect this priority conservation area, SANParks would need to partner with the private landowners around the two parks. This is where the idea of the mountain zebra Camdeboo corridor, so we're not yet at the protected environment, corridor project was born. Now, I think very easily there's I don't want to call it a misconception, but the word corridor, one starts to imagine a vast area where animals can move freely, maybe something like the Serengeti or something like that between these two parks. And that was obviously not necessarily the thinking, but the word corridor does bring those type of things to mind. So what I'm going to move to in the next slide is typically once this thing started being put together, we realized that a nice to have, or I don't want to call it a vanity project, no, I don't. So a nice to have, this thing wasn't really going to really get out of the starting blocks as a corridor. So we needed to do something a little bit more formal. And I must mention as well, to be a corridor, the game parks must drop their fences, the farmers must drop their fences, and it really just is not going to happen like that. So this thing then developed into something bigger, and I titled that From Corridor to Protected Environment. So facilitated by the Wilderness Foundation and funded by that Critical Ecosystem Partnership Fund, a 2-year project kicked off aimed at creating a corridor of protection between the national parks with a target of 45,000 hectares. Now, if you remember my first slide, we're sitting on 850,000 hectares. So amazingly, this was back in 2014 or so. The target was 45,000 hectares, and we actually all thought that's quite ambitious, to say the least. So what happened is there was 3 options that was put on the table to landowners. The one option was what we call the Proud Partner Agreement. And this was really just to attract people who, well, if I say people, landowners who didn't necessarily want to sign up any firm commitments, but this would at least get them involved and bring them into the circle, so to speak. Our next option was a protected environment, where properties would be formally designated and declared in terms of the Protected Environment Act. And then the third option was a contractual national park, where owners could elect to have their properties managed in terms of that of a national park. Obviously a little bit more complicated than that, but for the sake of this, that was also as an option. So what transpired is the majority of interested landowners opted for the protected environment. That's the PE. So that project needed to ensure that all landowners fully understood what the declaration as a protected environment would need for them, how the declaration process was to be completed, and what the long-term conditions would be for its status and its partnership with SANParks. Thereafter, the process of figuring out all the details began. Because remember, this is pretty much new to everyone, or was pretty much new to everyone. So it's important also to mention that the protected environment is not just a one-pager that landowners sign. It is gazetted at the Department of Environmental Affairs by property. So each property is listed in the Gazette and recorded in perpetuity there. So it's not a small step by landowners to have made that commitment. Okay, so yeah, I think it's just worth saying that the declaration process is clearly defined in the National Environmental Management Protection Areas Act of 2003. So we also don't dream up how we're going to or what we're going to do. There are requirements that we have to meet, and obviously we work then within those. So coming back to the corridor, it soon became clear that the vision of a corridor had grown into something more formal and far greater. This was no longer a dream about an extent of land between two national parks where there might be some form of cooperation, but rather a formal commitment by landowners towards a long-term project in the form of a protected environment. So following a great amount of hard work and many negotiations, en ek moet sê, die boere, ons boere, is nie altyd maklik nie. So it was, quite a large task. And then what came to be called phase 1, an area incorporating 64 landowners that signed up and covering 268,000 hectares, was officially declared the Mountain Zebra Camdeboo Project, a protected environment, in April 2016. So remember, we had a target of 45,000 hectares, and our phase 1 was 64 landowners and 268,000 hectares. So then phase 2 came along with funding and project support by the Global Environment Facility number 5 project, that is GEF 5 project in 2016. SANParks could take the newly declared MZCPE to the next level. Importantly, this project included the Protected Environment Expansion and Consolidation Program, which sought to further consolidate the fragmented MZCPE, because you can imagine there were farms dotted around all over the place between these two parks that had signed up in phase 1, and it was to consolidate this and obviously add more, in partnership with SANParks, to secure more of the park's buffer zones. This new phase saw landowners and others embracing the vision and objectives of the MZCPE. So through more hard work of our ever-enthusiastic buffer zone coordinator, Bronwyn Botha, the phase 2 intention to declare was submitted to the Department of Environmental Affairs in 2021, and protected environment status was declared in March 2022, which is 2 months ago, over a further 607,000 hectares, with another 110 landowners. The combined area now declared as the MZCPE totals 875,479 hectares, made up of 174 landowners. As I think I said earlier, that's about half the size of the Kruger National Park. Interestingly, also the southern extent of the MZCPE is a mere 17 kilometers, as the crow flies, from the northern boundary of the Addo Elephant National Park. So hopefully this gives you some idea of the extent of what has been achieved here. We'll look at a more detailed map, I think, next, and that will also show you how it looks. But it is a huge achievement and something that we are all very proud of, and certainly we have Bronwyn Botha to thank for her hard work, her tireless work. And she was also at the time assisted by Marika Stern. They really did us absolutely proud. So there is a phase 3 application underway, and that encompasses at this stage about another 130,000 hectares and 20 landowners. That would give us over 1 million hectares of protected environment, with almost 200 landowners and SANParks working together. Right, that is our map. So it's not entirely up to date. I hope you can see my cursor, my arrow. The white line is the original buffer zone of the two parks. Remember, we spoke of the park. So there is Craddock there. So if you can't see my arrow, let me maybe just also explain it. So To the east, on the right-hand side, is Craddock, and the big green there just to the left of Craddock is then the Mountain Zebra National Park. Coming across almost halfway, but to the west, is Graaf Reinet, and around it is the Camdeboo National Park. So those are the two parks that you can see, and the white dotted line going around then is then the buffer zone, particularly here with the Snowberg sitting up in the north here, making quite a large part of that buffer zone. Then there is other green in there, which is then private national parks, or not national parks, private parks. And then we've got the light green is the phase 1, and then the blue is the phase 2. The map says pending declaration. I stuck with this map because it was the nicest one to work with. It's not an updated one, but it gives you a clear picture. So you can see to the west, the protected environment has extended way beyond the buffer zone. To the south, it has extended way beyond the buffer zone, and even to the north towards Middelburg and to the south of Craddock. And that southern point is the one that's heading down towards Addo. So it's a great effort. It's something that we are extremely proud of. You can see my summary on the right. Just gives you again what the various phases, as we call them, number of landowners, number of hectares. I think we've been through that already, but importantly, 875,000 hectares and 174 landowners. Quite an achievement. Right, so what does this protected environment mean to landowners? Well, it means many things, and so we're obviously trying to summarize and keep things fairly brief here, but a few points that I sort of tried to make is the first one. The first block says protecting the area against external threats to the environment whilst maintaining or improving the land use for the benefit of those who live and work there. So that's a wide-ranging statement, and it can mean many things, but it gives you an indication of what it is that the landowners can benefit from being part of this protected environment. So against external threats, you can imagine what those could be. And then, of course, maintaining or improving the land use for the benefit of those who live and work here. Then the next one is by recognizing that every landowner is a custodian of the area, just as we all are over the property that we have, and that only through them can agricultural practices be improved to achieve positive outcomes for the environment. So what that's saying is, it's one thing to try and force from the outside change, but if people want to make the change themselves, then you can really start to do things. So suddenly you've got a whole lot of landowners with the same vision, and you can then start to achieve outcomes for their benefit and obviously the environment. So it's having the statutory and group relevance. So statutory meaning what is lying with the Department of Environmental Affairs, and the group relevance, that is the size of the group, offers a combined voice in the fields of conservation, agriculture, ecotourism, and much, much more. Okay, this slide, I won't dwell on too long. Part of what happens to run this protected environment is that every landowner has a management plan, and they sign on to that, and it's part of how the MZCPE is held together and operated. And that management plan that everybody ascribes to involves then obviously various aspects, including the social biodiversity and obviously some admin matters. Right, then the 4 eco-processes, which this might be familiar to some, but the 4 ecosystem processes that are pretty much fundamental to all ecosystems involves the water cycle, the mineral cycle, the energy flow, and the community dynamics. Now, those are broad titles. Water we understand quite well, but of course, once you get out into the field, it's not just water that comes out of your tap. It's the water that is retained in the veld, how the veld uses it, the quality, where it goes. Mineral cycle is using the sun and the minerals in the soil. The energy is the sun. The mineral cycle is what's in the soil and the plants. And then community dynamics can be people, animals, roads, fences. Okay, so that's just to give you some insight for my next slide, which what we're saying there is that we think that this MZCPE has some unique solutions to old problems. And I think the question should be asked, where does conservation and farming meet? So grasses and plants, now remember we just looked at those 4 ecosystem processes. So where does conservation and farming meet? Grasses and plants convert free solar energy and sequester carbon through photosynthesis and decomposition into grazing. Animals are the way in which that energy is converted via the grasses and plants consumed by those herbivores into protein for human consumption. So do you see the connection that's coming here through good stewardship of the land, good grasses and plants, energy efficient because they can absorb energy from the sun, they can sequester carbon, there's decomposition taking place, that gets converted to grazing. So you drive through the Karoo or wherever it is that you might drive, and you just see fields of grass, and we think, oh, well, that's grass. But the point is, that is the way that this energy from the sun is converted for animals to consume to produce protein, because we as human beings can't access the grass. We can get as far as lettuces and tomatoes, but grass is not really our scene as yet. So that basic community dynamic has become largely misrepresented or ignored. There's a lot of noise that goes on about the effects, the bad effects of livestock. Often it's misrepresented because it's in feedlot situations, which is not ideal. We're talking here about natural grazing land, natural range land, natural grass and bushveld. That should be utilized by animals. If nothing grazes it, it becomes dormant and ultimately deteriorates. It might seem amazing as well. So there is definitely a thing such as overgrazing, overutilization, but overrest can do similar damage. That might be a new concept to many, so my apologies for that, but that is the thinking out there now, is that overrest is not good. So we've got to utilize this grazing that is out there. And that grazing is growing free of charge from the sun's energy, from the minerals in the soil, you name it. And that is where the conservation and farming or agriculture can get closer together, because ultimately, if we can improve the grazing, both sides win. We are conserving, we are improving the environment, and the landowner, the farmer, will also, as his ground improves, so his production on his farm will improve. So better management of the grasslands results in improved solar energy absorption, that's your energy flow, improved water cycle or retention, that's your hydrological cycle, improved movement of minerals from soil to plants to animals and back again. Don't remember, a lot of it goes back into the ground. That's your mineral cycle. And then improved extensive game and livestock farming outcomes, community dynamics. And I just said there the game and livestock farming outcomes, but obviously there's improved conservation outcomes, because as your grazing land, as your grassland improves, so your water cycle improves. So this thing is, I don't want to call it a vicious circle, but it's a productive circle. And my comment is that's where they meet, because where does conservation and farming meet? If we can improve the ground, the soil, the grass, then we're conserving, but we're also improving, both for conservation and for farming. So they say protecting and conserving, or better still, improving the environment is an imperative. So conserving is almost a, it sounds good, but actually we want to make it better. We want to make it better because a lot of it hasn't been well looked after. So it is an imperative. But simultaneously, a country's growing population requires food and water. So there's little room for either of these to take preference over the other. So in other words, too much focus on producing food and water will be negative to conservation or the environment, and too much focus on just conserving will mean that we will battle to produce sufficient food for a growing population. So we believe that the MZCPE, the Mountain Zebra Camdeboo Protected Environment collaborative approach between conservation and agriculture should give effect to land being more compatible with conservation. And there's my conclusion. 40 minutes later, I would never have thought I would talk so long. The MZCPE is a true collaboration between conservation and agriculture, meeting a host of mutual objectives, ensuring the system's longevity for generations to come. So conservation through collaboration. So, Vali, that is my talk. I would like to thank all the people that have been involved in this quite huge project from the beginning and during. There's been many, many people, many enthusiastic people, huge amount of work done. Mentioning names, so there's too many to mention, but really it's been a great journey, and it's only the start. I guess there could be questions about, so what does it mean now? So we've really had to get through this declaration phase, make it all official, which only happened now, as you would have seen, in March 2022. So there's a lot of exciting stuff that will still happen. It doesn't always happen as quickly as people might hope, but certainly we've been amazed at how fast this has already moved. So we are very, very enthusiastic. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paul. I mean, I can say as well, what a great initiative. And your title actually says it all, conservation through collaboration. And I think there's a lesson for us all to learn in that. There are so many parks, and even in our own organization, being the honorary rangers, SANParks honorary rangers, where we can certainly learn lessons from you guys. I mean, you know, I grew up in a rural community, and boere is maar moeilike manne. And I must take my hat off to the farmers that that obviously are passionate about this whole initiative. And before I go to the questions, I just would like to state that there are so many comments that came through in the chat box, you know, that actually mentioned the uniqueness of this project, and also the fact that the way you presented it was most interesting, and there were a lot of good wishes from the participants that say, well done, go for it. We're looking forward to the progress as it as time goes on. I would like to, just before I go to the questions and answers, Paul, you know, the honorary rangers are very, we are a volunteer organization, and we basically are dependent on donations. So our very last screen, we will show a SnapScan QR code for those of you that would like to make a donation to our organization. You're more than welcome to, we'll keep it up for a minute or so. If you would like to make a contribution towards conservation, you're more than welcome to make a contribution there. I'm going to go to the Q&As, Paul. There was some of them very similar. The first two dealt with, the question is, do you see this in protected environment joining up with ADO in future?
It's a good question. It's not really our purpose or aim, but I think one would almost be conservative to think that that's not what might be a development going forward. Typically, ADO will also have buffer zones, and there would no doubt somewhere be potential for a project to look at that and start to tie that in. So again, it's a nice picture to paint that one is tied in, but it doesn't have any direct, if I can put it that way, connection, let's say, to those parks. You'll remember my 3 points that I had there at the beginning was to say, what is the purpose of that? And it's about the water catchment area, it's about the natural priority areas and the view shed. So yes, there's that. And I think it'll be a natural consequence probably of what's happening. But at this stage, it's not on our radar.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that, Paul. Then there's also a comment, and well, with that a question, and that is that is, what about poaching? How do you see all these landowners dealing with poaching? Does it happen? And if so, how do you deal with that?
Yeah. I think typically where we are here in this corner of the Eastern Cape, it's probably not, it's a more isolated problem than what might be experienced in more densely populated areas, but it will definitely be a problem. And the way this protected environment is designed is that landowners remain responsible for what happens on their property. So the protected environment does not get involved in individuals' issues, let's say. But certainly once there's something that can be achieved as a common group, that's where the protected environment will start to come together. So poaching is not a big issue for us, but it's something that would certainly be on the agenda.
Thank you, Paul. And then a very valid question from Des Botma, all the way there from the Free State. His question is, when you have change of land ownership, do you have, in inverted commas, control over commitment to the project from future landowners?
Yeah. No, it's a good question, Des. The protected environment status is with the Department of Environmental Affairs, and it is recorded against the property. So it's not recorded against the owner name. Obviously, that detail is there as well, but it's recorded against the property. And so as that property changes hands, the protected environment status effectively goes to the new owner. Should somebody not want to be a part of the protected environment, they then follow the I think they call it the deregistration process with the department. So whether it's a current owner or future owner, they can follow that process. But my understanding is that it stays against the property.
Well, that's good news. That's good news, Paul. At least it will ensure the future viability of the project. Then we have a question from Jackie Arendse, asking, she's saying what a fantastic effort. And the question is, will wind farms be allowed in this area?
That's a very good question, Jackie. Like any, you'll see I put the external threats, and what one person might see as a threat is not necessarily what somebody else might see as a threat. So anything can still happen. So even mining, let's use mining as an example. Mining can happen, but the process to get the mining license is more arduous. It's not as straightforward, and they've got to get, amongst other things, approval at the department. And obviously, once there's protected environment status against it, against the land, it becomes quite a lot more tricky. So the same will apply to wind farms. Fracking is another one that was certainly on our horizon some years ago. All of those things can still happen, but it's a longer road. It's a more difficult road. And certainly remembering again what the purpose is of this so-called buffer zone is to ensure, and thinking of wind farms now, the viewscape, I think that's what they like to call it, the view shed, and a bunch of towers on the edge of a national park, a bunch of turbines on the edge of a national park is not necessarily going to be desirable. But these things can still happen. And again, it comes down to individual landowners. The protected environment doesn't have, can I call it, legal clout, so to speak, aside from obviously what lies at the department.
Thank you, Paul. I think that deals with that. Just also a question from Dave Webster. His question is, are the SANParks honorary rangers involved in this project at all? And do you think there is room where we can be involved in it and contribute in any way?
Yeah, thanks, Willie, and thanks, Dave. To the best of my knowledge, not. I could be wrong, but I'm not aware that there has been involvement from the honorary rangers, but certainly I think it would be great to get together and talk some more. Very much so.
Yeah, and maybe we can start off by inviting the regions, the mountain zebra region and the Camdeboo region to get in touch with you, Paul, and see how best they can assist.
We'd love that. That would be great.
There's also a question regarding a link on the SANParks website. I'll deal with that later. There's a question from Roy van der Walt. I think you've dealt with it in a way, but the question is the wildlife free to roam between the farms yet?
Look, most or many of the farms in this area, I think it was Roy that asked the question, Willie, most of the farms do not have game fences around them. So a lot of the wildlife does roam freely. So it just depends on the landowner. He might have parts of his farm or his whole farm fenced, and then he is possibly farming with scarce species or something like that, and he wants to keep them in. But there's a lot of the game does move freely. But the farms are fenced, obviously, because of the commercial livestock.
Thank you, Paul. I think that goes hand in hand with a question that came from Robert Lebrun. He said, yeah, interesting to know, is there ever thoughts of potential of dropping fences, even if it's only between a few farms? Would they be interested in ecotourism and happy to share animals?
I'm sure, Robert, I'm sure that is something for the future. I can't see any reason why that can't happen. And I think typically that's what something like this MZCPE does. It starts to get people thinking out of the box. They're suddenly communicating with people that they haven't had the privilege of doing in the past because they don't know them, but they've got common ideals, and these things can grow. They really can. And it's that type of thing that I think excites us about the protected environment. It can do so much.
Thanks, Paul. Yeah, the questions are coming in very fast now. I hope you are comfortable. So another question is enough credit given to the hunting and game breeding fraternity in their fight to ensure the future of the mountain zebra? During COP17, they, together with the then DEA, managed to get species downlisted from CITES Appendix 1 to Appendix 2.
So the first part of the question, Willie, is there enough credit given?
Yeah. Is there enough credit given to the hunting and game breeding fraternity in their fight to ensure the future of mountain zebra, for instance, the mountain zebra species?
No, it's an interesting question, and probably not enough credit has been given. But what I can say, because the question is asking about the mountain zebra, is that we are having some early discussions with SANParks now, and I hope SANParks doesn't mind me sharing it, but to identify willing landowners that might be eligible to take mountain zebra onto their property. Now, that obviously is not an easy process, but that's the type of thing. So it's not hunting related, but that's the type of things that can come out because there's a question about mountain zebra. So I don't know if that answers the question, but the hunting fraternity, again, it's each landowner carries on with their business. That was, I think, one of the big reasons why this protected environment could take off so quickly is that it is not over prescriptive to landowners. Landowners don't feel threatened. The assurance is that you will go on with your business as you did, as you have. Obviously, then you also want to try and do some other more special and good stuff. But the point is, the protected environment is not being prescriptive about what you may do, when and how, and all of that, aside from obviously the applicable rules. But each landowner is respected, and I think we had it on one of the slides. They are the custodians, and they must make their property work, and then this thing can be a success. Because, sorry, Willie, and remember, if the landowner is not winning, if he's not succeeding, he will have very little interest in conservation. So it's about bringing improvement for everyone, and then we can work and get the conservation sorted as well. I hope that answers the question. I know it's not.
It definitely does answer the question, Paul, and it also answers some other questions that were posed regarding the commitment of landowners. And obviously, these landowners are passionate about conservation. Otherwise, they wouldn't have joined or agreed to this. And I'm sure there is a lot of let's call it peer gatekeeping, if we can call it that, amongst the farmers. So as far as I mean, it was clear from your presentation that landowners are really committed to this whole process and to see the success of it. Francois Kloppers has got a question, and he says, is there a protected environment management committee who looks after this matter?
There is, and that is, I'm the chairman of that committee. And then we've got quite a, because it's over a wide area, it's quite tricky. So we've got, and I forget the name now, but we've basically divided the areas into what are called clusters, and each one of them has a representative as well. And the design is then that those cluster representatives are close to their grouping of people, and then they in turn represent their clusters up to the management committee, or which we just call the EXCO, the executive committee, which at the moment is myself, a past chairman, a treasurer and a secretary. We've tried to keep it simple, and it's not part of the question, but what we, our next step now, apart from that there is a phase 3 to bring in the last of, or some more properties, what we are looking for is some really long-term bigger projects that have some people on the ground who will then take over the day-to-day administration. So at this stage, we see ourselves as in a bit of a in-between phase where we've moved out from the funded phase at the end of March or so. And so the committee is really just running with the day-to-day stuff just to keep it ticking over until something big comes about.
Karen, and then there's also an interesting question. Thanks for that, Paul, from Karen Miller. And the way I understand the question is, do you require farms to have game corridors or even game on the farm, even if they farm with cattle and sheep? So in order to be part of this whole project, do you, I suppose, do you have to stock wildlife on your farm?
No, thanks, Karen, Willie. No, there's no requirement for that. I guess there are some farms that might not even have natural grassland. They might just be irrigation. They could be growing lucerne or millies, but they want to be part of it. And whatever's happening on that ground, that landowner can be of benefit to the protected environment, even if he doesn't have wildlife. Because remember, the environment is not just about animals. It's about that cycle that I shared. It's about the water cycle. It's about all of those 4 things. So there's no requirement like that. Dankie, Karen.
Yeah, thank you very much, Paul. I think I'm going to wrap up now, and I think you answered most of the questions. I just would like to make one last comment, and it was actually it was summed up by Miranda in a comment she made, and I would like to echo that. Her comment was, Paul, that is amazing and inspirational progress in how cooperation between parties can be obtained in achieving goals shared by all. Congratulations and thank you for your leadership and committee and your commitment. And like I said, I would like to echo that, Paul. I personally think this is absolutely a fantastic initiative. Not only does it call for a lot of commitment, but I'm sure it also calls for a lot of private time from both you and your committee, and also the participants in this whole process. And we would like to congratulate you and thank you very much for sharing and give us more insight into this whole process tonight. And from SANParks HR side, we are looking forward to maybe be part of this whole process in future. But thank you so much, Paul.
Willie, can I have a word as well?
Yes, you're welcome.
So Willie, thanks. I cut you short because I wasn't sure if you're going to close my screen now. So I think, yeah, I guess there's a lot of landowners that are watching as well. And I hope they're in agreement with what I've shared. and that it has been beneficial to them. So to them, thank you for joining us this evening. Willie, you and your team, really great work. You know, you really put it together professionally, and it's been, dit was nou baie lekker om saam met julle nou 'n bietjie te werk. En regtig, ek hoop ons kom by mekaar uit dat ons iets kan doen. Ons is lus om met mense te praat. I think through that, the more people we can talk to, the more we can be in contact, the more stuff we can start to do. Stuff is nie 'n goeie woord nie, but the more things we can start to do. So please, we would love to meet with you guys. And the good news is, so we've had load shedding here since 5:30 until 7:30, and my Lister generator has at least kept the lights on, and I didn't disappear from the screen. So I'm pleased about that as well. En Willie, dit was nou regtig, en saam met die res van jou span, dit was baie lekker om saam met julle te gedeel het. En ek hoop dit was dan vir julle ook lekker. Maar dit was baie lekker, dankie.
Ja, baie dankie Paul. Dit was inderdaad vir ons nie net 'n voorreg nie, maar dit was baie lekker om na baie professionele aanbieding te luister. I mean, your presentation, and the reason why I switch over to English, I saw that we have a international audience tonight. There were people signing in from the UK and from Australia. So you obviously you created a lot of interest with the topic, and it was a real inspiration, not only to listen to you, but to see what can be done if people collaborate. And we would like to wish you and the project the best of luck for the future. Paul, thanks very much. So just a quick, I would like to, there was one question regarding a website, and those of you that have pens handy can write down the website. This project, the MZCPE, has got a website, and you can visit it, and the full management plan is also available on that website. And if I'm correct, Paul, I think it's www.mzcpe.coza.
That's right. And
on that website, you can get more information about the background and the progress, and also you can download the management plan from that website. So next week, not next week, in 2 weeks' time, we are going to host a very interesting webinar. And the upcoming webinar will be about saving a spot for leopards in the Cape. It will be presented by the Cape Leopard Trust, and our speakers will be Dr. Catherine Williams and Jeannie Hayward from the Cape Leopard Trust. They're doing a huge and significant job protecting the Cape leopard. We all know that Cape leopards are smaller in size and their territories are much bigger. And the Cape Leopard Trust, I'm sure Catherine and Jeannie will share with you, they have projects going on in the Kamiesberg, in the Helderberg, in the Cederberg Mountains, and they're doing great work there. So those of you that are interested in the work the Cape Leopard Trust do, and to learn more about the Cape leopard in particular, you are welcome to join us and to register for our webinar on the 8th of June 2022. And then, like I said, from my side, I would like to thank everyone of you for joining us. I hope that you were inspired by tonight's talk, And I would like you to also, if you need more information, those of you that are not honorary rangers, if you need more information about us and our organization, you're welcome to visit our website. It's on the screen now, www.SANParksvolunteers.org, and you can read all about us there, or you can just go to the SANParks website, and there is a link from the SANParks website to us. And those of you that wish to make a donation, please, there you will see the snap scan and the QR code. You're more than welcome to do that. Don't ask me how it works, but I'm sure those of you that have done it in the past, the younger generation, you exactly know what to do. With that, I would like to thank the team. I would like to thank every one of you for joining us tonight, and I would like to wish you a pleasant week and blessings, and hope to see you in 2 weeks' time. Thank you very much.